All right, so today we're going to talk about generational astrology and Chiron. If you watched my last video, we talked a lot about Pluto. Had been my intention to talk about all of the generational astrology points, but I couldn't get to all of it in 15 minutes. So I want to keep these like nice and short and sweet. So we're going to just talk about Chiron this time. And the reason that we care about Chiron, okay, here's the thing. Chiron is an asteroid that has like an elliptical pattern. And the meaning that we've ascribed to Chiron is the wounded healer. So anything that is like, something that we are working through and walking through, and like the things that are like the hardest stuff for us to feel. And then we go and share that information with the world. And that's what Chiron does. But Chiron is a weirdly slow / fast moving asteroid. It does not move in a normal pattern. Like, for example, like Jupiter runs through about one sign a year, right? Chiron goes quickly through some signs, and then like in Aries, it spends about 20 years. So because of its elliptical pattern. Okay, so when it's going through this part is when it's going through the Aries, and then it goes through these other parts really quickly, and then it has this sort of egg-shaped pattern. Let me show you. This Chiron chart is super detailed, unfortunately, so it's hard to get a sense of what's going on here, but I want you to see, first of all of these dates are extrapolated. No human has ever seen Chiron on May 24th, 1926, right? This is all just mathematically figured out. We did not know Chiron existed until 1977 when Chiron entered Taurus, okay? So for everybody who has Chiron in Aries right now, you're experiencing your what's called Chiron return. But when you were born, nobody knew what a Chiron was. So it's going to be a little different for you, okay? So just like I said with Pluto, when we are aware of the existence of something, that is different than before we are aware of it. And because Chiron was so recently discovered and has a very significant astrological meaning, in fact, it rules a sign along with many other things. It rules Virgo. Mercury also rules Virgo, and all of the asteroid goddesses rule Virgo. But it's significant enough for us to say, oh, you rule a sign, you have a meaning. Meanwhile, it's less than 50 years old. Okay. So all that to say, our conscious awareness of the wounded healer is very young. And that is a very significant thing in our evolution. This idea that we can like be in pain and help others with that same pain, like the blind leading the blind, can be a thing. That is a big deal. So Chiron moved into Taurus. So Chiron in Taurus in 1977. Before that, it was in Aries from 1969. No, I lied. See how Chiron moves back and forth just like Pluto and all the other slow-moving planets. It's going to dance between signs before it fully moves into the next sign, because it's always dancing in the first place. And the dances are long, right? Like when Pluto goes retrograde, it's on the order of like 5 to 7 months, right? Chiron is similar. Chiron goes retrograde not that often, but when it does, it goes backwards for a very long time and comes back forward for a very long time. So Chiron went into Aries fully, right, for the first time in 1968. Fully enters Aries and stays there in 1969. See this? Just trying to get my bearings here. So everyone born Chiron in Aries is significant for everyone born from 1968 to 1976. And then it left Aries fully in 1977. Okay. And it went into Taurus for like a little blip. So if you were born between May and October of 1976, you'd be like, oh, I'm one of the few who have Chiron in Taurus really early when everyone else was having it in Aries. Anyways, so this is This is also a generational transition point. That's my point. So we have this, when we talked about Pluto moved in 1971. Pluto shifted signs in 1971. And here we have, again, Chiron shifting signs in 1968-69. Okay, so again, that generational thing is super tight, right? That's just a couple of years for those two slow-moving planets to be changing signs. And so what that tells us is we're going to see a pretty significant shift in the perspective of the population. So on one hand, with Pluto, we're seeing a significant shift in the perspectives on change. On the other hand, we're seeing a significant shift in the perspectives on healing. So everyone in Generation X, everyone born from the late 60s on to the very early 80s, 81, 82, and 83, right? You see here, 1983 was when Chiron was dancing between Taurus and Gemini. Okay. So we have, and Pluto changed signs right at the same time there too. So we have this very significant Generation X, very significant, clear lines when it comes to the generational planets and the asteroid of Chiron. So Gen X, again, is really, there's a piece here. There's a piece here of finding my worth. And the first half of Gen X, with the Aries half, is asking the question, who am I? Am I inherently valuable? Am I inherently worthy? And then the second half of that question for Gen X is, what value do I hold? Right? So the first half is asking, am I good enough to exist? And the second half is, what is my value? Okay. So from an astrological perspective, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I feel more Generation X and I'm born in the 80s. Yeah. From an astrological perspective, the generation goes from 1970, 1968 to 1983. That's Gen X. And that's what I have to say about Gen X. There's actually a lot more I have to say about Gen X because they're a special animal. Having been the generation immediately after the baby boomers, and so they're a significantly smaller group of people. Gen X is a significantly smaller group of people. Their children are not millennials, right? Because they're right next to each other. This skips a generation. So their children is Gen Z. And what do we see? We see a very similar behavior in Gen Z as we do Gen X. They literally just don't care what people think. They do really weird things, right? If Gen X was weird, Gen Z is crazy, right? That's because they learned that from their parents, right? And so their parents were learning these questions of, am I inherently valuable? And what is my value? Am I inherently valuable? What is my value? How can I figure out these two things? Am I worthy of existing? And why am I worthy of existing? And so because their parents were still wrestling with this Chiron stuff comes through for entire lives. It's a slow moving experience. And so when you have your first Chiron return, you're about 49 years old, okay? Gen X is just now starting to have their Chiron return. They're starting to just now be okay with who they are. Well, they were always okay, but they're not really asking this question anymore because that's been the question they've been asking their whole lives. And so when you have that return, it comes to a fruition completion point, and you go, oh, now I get it. Now I see what this was trying to teach me for the last 50 years of my life. And you have little tiny, not tiny, but significant goalposts along the way. Little benchmarks along the way. That's what I was looking for. So if you are Gen X, if you are coming up on your 50th birthday soon, you're probably, if you haven't quite gotten there, you're probably feeling like there's something about to pop. You're just there's too much pressure. And if you've already gone past it, you're probably sitting there going, oh, I know exactly what's up. And it doesn't matter if anyone else believes me that I know what's up, but I know exactly what's up. So that is Gen X and Chiron. The reason that Gen X and Chiron is significant is because Chiron was discovered during Gen X's lifetime or during their birth time. And when, like I've said before, when we become aware of these things, that's when they become even more significant. And so Chiron is supremely significant for Gen X. Chiron is the ushering in of the new wave of asking these questions, right? What is my value, and am I good enough? Am I good enough? And what's my value? Am I inherently worthy? And what does that look like? And I find it so wild that Chiron wasn't even discovered until about the time it entered Taurus, right? How crazy. Like, this is the value. Here's the value. We're showing you the value. And so everyone before that, all of Gen X before that is like, I don't know what's like, what is happening, right? And then after that point, they're like, I have to figure this out. I can figure this out. There's like a little bit more traction there. Anyways, that's 1977 that happened. I hope this was helpful for you. I feel like I was all over the place a little bit. But I have a lot to say about generational astrology and a lot of these things. So, yeah, that's my diatribe on Chiron and Gen X. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time.